From Washington, D.C. to the heart of America, welcome to Mark Alford's America. I'm freshman Congressman from Missouri, Mark Alford, and I believe in America. I believe in you. And most importantly, I believe that our greatest days are still ahead of us. You know, each week we take you behind the scenes to share the stories, news, legislation, and to meet the great people who are helping shape our great nation. And today we're talking with Congressman Keith Self of Texas, proudly representing Texas's 3rd Congressional District. Self went to the United States Military Academy at West Point, where he began a 25-year career of service to our great nation. His Army tours included Airborne Infantry Platoon Leader, Airborne Infantry Company Commander, Special Forces Detachment Commander, and Special Forces Company Commander. His service took him to Europe, the Middle East, and the Pentagon, where he worked on the most sensitive military programs. He deployed to Grenada, Bosnia, Afghanistan, and Iraqi freedom. During his career, Keith received the Master Parachutist Badge, Ranger Tab, Special Forces Tab, and Joint Staff Badge. He retired with the rank of Lieutenant Colonel, and after that, he was elected County Judge in Collin County, Texas. In Missouri, it's kind of like the county executive position. He was elected in 2006, where he served 3 terms, and we are in his office today on the 1st floor of Longworth, a couple of floors down below us. Welcome, Congressman Keith Self.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
Wow, what a
to be with you.
I didn't know you had done all this. We met during orientation, but you don't go around bragging about your service, which I appreciate, but you need to be lauded and applauded for your service to our nation. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for that. It was an honor to serve, and as I continue to serve.
Tell me about what got you into the military to begin with.
Great story. My brother is 2 years ahead of me. He went to West Point. He hated it, but he came home and told me, you got to march and you got to shoot and you got to play sports and you got to study and all these things. And I'm like, really? So that's why I applied. And it was the only college I applied to.
Really?
Really.
How tough was it? How tough is it?
Well, remember, that was the nadir of Vietnam.
Yeah.
So nobody wanted to really go to the service academies at that time. In fact, I talked to a classmate of mine in the registrar's office, 15, 20 years later. And I said, Dave, how do we match up against the kids that are going into the academies today? He laughed at me. He said, Keith, compared to these kids, you and I would have been sweeping the floors at McDonald's.
So throughout your service, what we just read off, what was the most memorable to you? What was the most rewarding part of your service?
Most rewarding is always serving with troops and NCOs. Always. Nothing matches that. Yes, I served in the black programs in the Pentagon. I was in the White House Situation Room. I was in the old executive office building, but nothing compares to serving with troops and NCOs.
So how do you take that mindset? And then you later got into county government near Dallas, but I want to skip ahead to your days in Congress here. How do you go from that mindset where you get stuff done and you have a focus and a mission, and now we're on Capitol Hill and it seems like we're not getting anything done?
Well,
that's got to be frustrating to you.
That is a great question. And no, it's not that frustrating. As the county judge, you have very little authority because you're on a commissioner's court. So you got to learn to count to 3.
Right.
You only pass things as 3 people. So it's a position of influence, not command, not authority. Great training ground for Congress, because as a freshman congressman, as you know, I have 0 authority.
Right.
So I better have some influence, or I might as well go home.
How are you developing that influence and exerting that influence where possible?
Well, compared to some, quietly.
But you have been influenced. I mean, when we came into orientation, you've kind of led part of our group in some things that even as freshmen who had not been sworn in yet. You established yourself as a leader early on, I think.
Well, I thank you for that, but it's kind of like what I say. If you have to tell somebody you're humble, you're not.
Right.
If you have to tell somebody you're the boss, you're not, along those lines.
Mm. All right. So I'm on armed services, and I've really been trying to wrap my head around. I never served in the military. Mm-hmm. We have a huge deficit right now in young men and women who want to serve in the military. We're going to miss our goals. The Army missed their goal by 25% last year. It's not looking good for this year. Why do we have that issue in America now? Why do young people not want to serve, do you think?
There's two reasons. First of all, only 25% or even less today are even qualified to join the military. Legal issues, obesity, whatever. So within that limited scope there, the people who want to join the military want the camaraderie. They want the mission. They want the challenge. They want to serve something greater than themselves. And frankly, in today's military, a lot of people don't see that happening. They see it's a lot of paperwork, it's a lot of bureaucracy, it's a lot of diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's a lot of make work, rather than focusing on the lethality of our military so that we can deter our adversaries.
How did we get there? Did it come about through the Obama mandates, through the generals down to reshape the military into this diverse, equity-driven machine?
Actually, it's not unusual in American history. Between wars, we always seem to lose our focus. So when the next war starts, we will clean house. If history repeats itself, we'll get some war fighters in there. We'll tighten up on the standards. The people will come to serve because it's something bigger than themselves. It will be the need that our nation has for our young people to step up. And it can happen again. But they've got to see the need. We've got to clean house at the senior ranks, get out all the politicians and get some war fighters in, and then we'll be ready to deter.
I was talking with a two-star a couple of weeks ago at a reception, and we were talking about this, and he says, Mark, we don't just need more people to join the military. We need national service. We need to return to a mindset where everyone has this, that there's something beyond themselves. There's a greater good, the commonality that we share as Americans to make, pardon the phrase, make America great again.
No, absolutely. I agree. A national service would be wonderful. And it could be anything. It would simply be serving our nation. It wouldn't have to be in the military. It could be in many other areas. But as you say, what we need is to reestablish the civic training of our populace. It's not all about more money. It's not all about more leisure. It's not all about more comfort. We've got to reestablish the civic goal of our citizens, that our nation is great, but it requires, and every republic requires, an informed and engaged citizenry. And I think that would go a long way to doing that.
Do you think we're going to get to that point while we're still here in Congress? Or I know that's a big, I think it's going to take a new administration, definitely, don't you? To get a strong conservative Republican back in the White House who's going to lead with determination and patriotism.
Well, right now, I have to tell you, I think the American people are going to be leading this band real fast. There is a real movement of frustration, of anger with the federal government as a whole. We're hearing it right now on our phone calls. And I think that bodes well for us, because politicians, in this case, may not lead, they may follow. And I think our citizens are sick and tired of this wokeness that we see, this lack of lethality in our military, the inflation, the debt just crossed $33 trillion, and the inflation in our families is crushing our families.
It really is.
They've taken about a 20% real cut in wages when you factor in 16% increase in prices and a 3% cut in real wages. That's almost 20%. That's hard to absorb.
And it didn't just come about through this administration. This has been growing for some time. Republicans have spent money as well. I mean, the debt that we've incurred in the last 10 years equals what we've pretty much incurred from World War II to 2013.
Yeah, what I say is the last 22 years, 11 Congresses, 22 years, our debt has gone from $10 trillion to $33 trillion. Of those 22 years, Republicans have been in charge of the House, had a House majority, over 2/3 of the time, 16 out of 22 years. That's not a glowing report on the Republicans' majorities in the House.
When we come back, I want to dip into that a little bit further. There's some dysfunction here in Washington right now, and you and I are part of that. I think trying to make changes where we can as freshmen. I want to delve into that, what's going on in our conference right now. Also want to talk about the ATF. I know you're very passionate about what's been going on. I signed on to one of your letters about how really they're just making up law, as so many bureaucratic agencies are right now. I want to talk about that as well. Hey, listen, stay with us for Mark Alford's America. We'll be back with more. We're talking with freshman Congressman Keith Self of Texas. We're going to talk about his recent letter to the ATF regarding their proposed restrictions on American firearms. I think they're determined, Keith, to take away our guns, and they're doing it incrementally, and we have to be wary. We have to be on guard for what this administration is trying to do to all Americans to try to disarm us in our districts. Anyway, we'll be back with more of Mark Alford's America right after this. Welcome back to Mark Alford's America, where we give you a behind-the-scenes look at Washington and let you meet some of the great folks helping shape our wonderful nation. We are inside the office of Congressman Keith Self of Texas. You got a big office here. Have you been up to my office?
I have not.
Well, you need to come up. I'm not complaining. It's where I'm in Congress, but we got the last pick of offices, and we are in the freshman office of Mike Pence, actually. So kind of a historic office there. Anyway, you have a beautiful office. Do you get a lot of visitors here from your district?
We get some.
Yeah.
We get some. Not a lot, I would say, but some.
It's kind of nice.
It's regular.
Come up here. Of course, you spent time here at the Pentagon and all, so this isn't a big wow factor for you. But I remember the first time I came and got on the House floor, it's like, I can't believe I'm here. Can you believe that the voters put us here, Keith?
Mark, every time I walk to work, I look up at the Capitol and say, I have the honor of working in that building.
It's just unbelievable. Fewer than, I think, 12,000 people in history have had this honor of serving. Right. And, you know, we're one of 435. We're not going to do anything on our own necessarily. But one of the things you do, you're fighting the ATF. You came out with a letter to the ATF director talking about the opposition to their new proposed rule to expand the definition of firearms dealers. Now, a lot of people, look, I grew up in Texas. I'm a sixth-generation Texan. I represent Missouri now. But I know that Texans, Missourians, people who love this Second Amendment, proudly buy, sell, and trade firearms. What is the ATF trying to do to curb that in America?
What they've done is they have expanded the definition of engaging in business. So if you do anything other than add to your own collection, very rarely, they're going to require you to have a federal firearms license.
Which is not easy to get.
It's not easy to get. It requires a lot of paperwork, a lot of time, a lot of expense up front, and then you have to keep records for a lifetime, and then you have to open your home to inspections by ATF.
At any time.
At any time. So this is onerous for the man who just wants to have a hobby, selling guns at a gun show, trading with his friends. They're going to take the presumptive step to say you must have an FFL.
Why are they doing this?
It's very simple. The president issued an executive order in March that directed them to get as close to universal background checks as possible under existing law. They've taken the president at his word, and they've established this rule. So this rule does not cut down on criminal activity. This rule makes criminals of citizens.
And that seems to be the modus operandi with this administration, that if you can't do it, if you can't legislate it, let's write an executive order, let's go around the rules to get to the way that we want to do it. And it's usually to stymie Americans from freedoms that they have.
Oh, yeah. We've passed 4 bills that have been signed into law this year. The president has issued 12 executive orders.
Yeah.
That's the way he does business. I think this president considers Congress irrelevant. I think he considers the law irrelevant because he can get away with it.
It's pretty sad.
It is.
You combine that with the pistol brace rule that came out earlier that turned how many hundreds of thousand people into felons?
Probably millions.
Yeah. A lot of people like Andrew Clyde who are fighting that and still fighting that. But this is just a general mindset, I think, of this administration to try to circumvent the will of the people. You look at what he did with the Inflation Reduction Act, which is not really, he admits that it's not reducing inflation.
Right.
It's a way to put forth the Green New Deal without calling it the Green New Deal and pay for it. So we're living in serious times right now when it comes to the budget and the appropriation bills and trying to get something done for the American people. Where do you stand on this, the issue and the continuing resolution?
Well, the continuing resolution historically has simply been a precursor to an omnibus. All it does is buy you time. I am trying to figure out, under the current proposed CR, continuing resolution, what do conservatives get out of it? We talk about the 8% cut. We talk about the border security. But in reality, we won't get them. We will message them. We might even pass them. The Senate's not going to pass them, and if they did, the president wouldn't sign it. So we're not going to get them. So my question is, how do we change the behavior of the president, of the administration? And frankly, what concerns me more than this CR is, what is the end game? Because normally, again, traditionally, historically, Republicans at the end of the day, because we'll have to go back and forth with the Senate over the appropriations bills.
Right.
At the end of the day, past all the CRs, how do we fund the government? And the Republicans normally fold like a cheap suit.
But by passing a CR, you put the ball back in the Senate's court, and then why isn't it the Schumer shutdown then? It seems like every time the Democrats will hang it on the Republicans' neck, and the Republicans, I saw it when I was in the news media, and it always involves waiting the last minute again, but we kind of shoot ourselves in the foot when we do that. But why couldn't it be the Schumer shutdown?
That is the one thing that we might possibly get, that the Dems would own the shutdown. But again, I'm more concerned about actually getting something done rather than having a messaging point that the Dems have the shutdown. Because what I'm hearing from my constituents, and I know other members of Congress are hearing the same thing, is they want us to fight. Let me just mention two people to you. First of all, President Trump, former President Trump, indicted 4 times.
Right.
His numbers are holding steady. Why is that? It's because people see him as fighting for them. Let's talk about Senator Tuberville. He right now is holding up military promotions. I think he is doing great work over there. And as he says, I'm not the one breaking the law.
Right.
And he is standing firm. He stood firm since March. We're now in September. He has stood firm. And I think that they will capitulate real soon and hold individual votes for at least some of the senior officers.
I have a different way of looking at that because I've supported and continue to support Tuberville.
Mm-hmm.
We had a good conversation personally, face-to-face, last week about this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on armed services, and I support him all the way on this. It's tantamount to funding the Planned Parenthood by saying, hey, we're not going to fund the abortion, but we're going to pay the light bill. When you pay the light bill, you're still funding the abortion. If you're paying for travel for someone at our district, Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, abortion is illegal. If you're paying for their travel and lodging to go to Kansas to get an abortion, you're facilitating the abortion.
And you're breaking the law.
You're breaking the law. It is against the law. Keith, do you know how many families this has impacted on our military bases since this went into effect?
I don't.
12. So in actuality, it's 12 families that are holding this up. It's not Tommy Tuberville. Look, I believe in the life-affirming care for a mother and the child growing inside her. And I think you do too. But I also believe we should not be breaking the law. We should not have taxpayer-funded abortions or facilitate those abortions under any circumstances.
Agreed. That's why I think he is doing great work. And frankly, I think he's the model for the Republican Party, our conference today, because that's what happens when you stand firm and you simply say no. With $33 trillion in debt, and yet we're arguing over something like $115 billion when we're $33 trillion in debt, and we're going to spend probably $6 trillion this year. We're arguing over $115
Well, the president, his budget wants another $17 trillion over the next 10 years.
Exactly.
It's unsustainable.
When do we say, it was said years ago, stand athwart history and yell stop? When do we do that? I say, let's do it.
You're drawing the line in the sand like Colonel Travis.
I want us to actually accomplish something, not just message something. That's the difference to me. We talk about messaging. When are we going to get something done? We won't get it done with a Democrat Senate and a Democrat president unless we just say no. As Ronald Reagan said, balancing the budget is a lot like protecting your virtue. And sometimes you just have to say no.
Keith, thank you so much. Thanks for being part of Mark Alford's America. We'll talk again next week. Until then, remember, I believe in you. I believe that our best days are still ahead of us. And Keith Self, I believe in America. And I know you do too, don't you?
Thank you so much,
All right,
Mark.
take care.
Absolutely.